very specifically, we have several pillars within the ministry. So faith-driven investor, which I work with directly, and then also solving the world's greatest problems, which is, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Today, we're going to invite you into something called Solving the World's Greatest Problems, an amazing conference coming up in San Jose in September, and what we call FDI, Faith-Driven Investor Small Groups that meet online. So for each of you listening, you're going to be encouraged because this is going to be practical ways to take the next step to learn what it means to be a faith-driven investor and learn more about impact investing. So thanks for being here. Today, I am really fortunate to have Samantha Couch in the house, and she is the Vice President of Community at Faith-Driven Investor, where she helps Christ-centered investors align their resources with God's greater purpose and engage in solving some of the world's most pressing problems through redemptive capital. So as you'll remember, our last episode, we talked with Dana Wichterman, who defined for us what is impact investing all about. And today, this is part 2 in our series of 4 episodes, all about using redemptive capital, impact investing, and really making a difference for the kingdom. So I know you're going to love to hear Samantha's story, and she's also a proud mom of 4 and a blended family. She's a dedicated advocate for veterans and survivors of trafficking, and she's a firm believer in the power of community to spark transformation. So you are going to love hearing from my guest, Samantha. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I think it's just so great to be able to use podcasts as a platform to share people's stories and invite people in. And as you and I were saying ahead of time, if you and I were just grabbing coffee together, it would just be you and I that would hear the conversation. And this platform just allows people all over the world to get to engage and be inspired by your story. So I just heard we were in the Czech Republic, so kind of fun.
Wow, that's
I know,
amazing.
right?
I love that. Yeah,
so exciting. Yeah, so let's just start out with to explain the company that you currently work for, and then a little bit about the journey in your career, your calling, of what led you there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for a nonprofit ministry, overarching, known as Faith-Driven Movement. But very specifically, we have several pillars within the ministry. So Faith-Driven Investor, which I work with directly, and then also solving the world's greatest problems, which is, a big, hairy, audacious goal. But another piece that Faith-Driven Investor is working towards. And then we also have Faith-Driven Entrepreneur, a new program we just launched, Faith-Driven Entrepreneur for teens. So starting to reach that teenage demographic about, God's called you to create, and what does that look like? And then Halftime. We recently merged with Halftime last year. So that's kind of all of the brands under the one umbrella. And with Faith-Driven Investor, we're really all about heart posture and the understanding of the very basic principle that God owns it all, including your money, which is a really challenging topic for many, as we know, the power that money has over us. And so really working to transform hearts under that understanding and then activate capital in a way that supports human flourishing and expands the kingdom, and doing that in community with other like-minded individuals.
Very well said. And I think it's just so great that you're reaching the teens and giving them that framework, before or during when they're in high school, and they take that into college. And then for those of you who aren't familiar with Halftime is a ministry that is at the other end of the spectrum. So you're coming, not toward the end of your career, but, later stages, and trying to realize, what am I going after? Success, significance? Have I been going after both during my career? What do I want to do going forward? So that's also such a beautiful blend that you all are partnering with them, because I feel like, in decades past, there was such a line between, am I going to do missions as a Christian, or am I going to be in the business world? It's just, there shouldn't be that line, as we know, because God has made each of us with our gifts. And if you're called to be a plumber, an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, then please be that. And we really need you here in the States to do that. And you should not feel guilty that you're doing that here and you're not, a missionary in the, Saharan desert kind of thing. So I love that just with all the different organizations, it's such a better focus on who are we shaped to be? What is our calling? Understanding that, what are we passionate about? and then being able to use our resources, our talents, our treasures for God's kingdom. And you mentioned solving the world's greatest problems. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's a fantastic conference that you all are offering now.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been really great. So we have already brought together, just since January, 200 families who have stepped in to come together. So we're talking to high capacity givers, investors, and builders about this one pocket approach of your generosity and your investing, and how you can utilize both of those things to solve some of the world's greatest problems. And it's just like you were saying that, some of us are called to be plumbers or architects. Some of us are called to be very passionate about foster care and adoption. Some of us are called, to battle trafficking or clean water and whatever that may be. So we are working to help individuals get really clear on really how God breaks their heart for the kingdom, and then have an understanding and a pathway forward on what we're calling actually a family battle plan. There's a workbook that you go through together. And then at the end of it, you have this artifact that's really a filter for, what is your family motto? What's your credo? What do you guys stand for? What are the core values? And then from all of that, what are you called to, and you may be called to something different than your spouse or your adult children, but understanding that and having a framework from where all of your decisions are then made of how you're giving generously, how you're investing, and how you're giving your time as well.
Right. Yes. And I think to your point too, about just how we're each called, there's the other component that we can't fail to address. And that is, if you're called and very gifted at making tons of money, please keep doing that, because we need you to be a gospel patron. We need you to be a funder. And because you have that gift, again, you should not feel guilt or shame, but it should be embraced to say, okay, you've given me this gift that not everybody has. And how do you want me to steward these resources? How do you want me to be generous with what you've given me and bless the kingdom? And what causes am I passionate about? Like you said, sometimes your kids, especially adult children, are passionate about different causes. So, and I love how God is always like tweaking things with us, and nothing's ever static. So you might make your battle plan now, and then you revisit it in a year, you revisit it in 2 years, and just kind of see what's changed. How are we the same? So it's just both what you're doing, and then also Halftime, I feel, are just such intentional organizations. And so many times we don't take the time, and we're just swept up in the busyness of everything. And we look back and a decade has passed, and then all of a sudden another decade is going to pass if we're not careful. And so taking that time to attend a conference like you're talking about, it really is pivotal, and the legacy of your family will be affected for generations to come. I really believe that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us more about your career. And, both you and I are in unique places in that we both work in what we call the generosity ecosystem. And I don't think, if you're like me, when you were in college, you could have forecast that you and I would be working in this field, but obviously you love it and I love it as well. So tell me what other roles, or just more about your shape and calling that led you to this space.
Sure. So it's been a long and winding road to get here. I always worked in corporate America from the time I graduated right up until I stepped into my role at Faith Driven, was really in kind of that Fortune 25 space in marketing, in sales, in supply chain and purchasing, things like that. And my husband had come to me in 2019. He's a creative, wonderfully talented. God has blessed him so much. And he's always been a creative director kind of in that space, and wanted to launch his own agency. So he came to me and said, I think it's time. I think the time is right to be able to step out and do that. And that was very scary, but we were like, okay, well, let's do that. And end of 2019. And so we did that. And it was just, God's timing is so perfect, because we had a couple of unexpected family losses at that time. And had he been in his corporate job, he would have not been able to step in and love on his mom and his sister and his family in the way in which he was able to. But through that, we launched this marketing and advertising agency. And I was still consulting for a large healthcare firm at the time. But that was our first venture into like the entrepreneurial world.
Right.
And it was great. But we kept thinking like, gosh, there's got to be something out there for Christ followers who are business owners, who are just like trying to figure this out and trying to do this. Like, what does that look like? through a Google search, I found faith-driven entrepreneur, and there was a group. There was an in-person group that was kicking off within just a couple of weeks, and so I joined that. And I would go every morning for 8 weeks, and I would come home. And we have children, so my husband takes them to school. So I was the one who was able to go in person to the group and would call him every week afterwards. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what we talked about. This is amazing. We've got to watch this video together. And each week it was like God was just tweaking my heart a little bit more of like, hey, I think you need to be a part of this. I think you need to be a bigger part of this. And so I started talking to my husband about like, hey, I think they've got some roles open. Would it be okay if I, tried to go be a bigger part of this ministry? I've never done that before. I'd never been in the ministry world, or the nonprofit world. And he was like, hey, who am I to say no if God is putting something on your heart? And so within a couple of weeks, I was talking to Justin Foreman and Henry Kasner, our two founders. And about halfway through those conversations, they said, we're getting ready to stand up this other piece of the ministry called Faith-Driven Investor. And we really think that you should be involved in that. And I, at first, thought, absolutely not. I don't know anything about that space. I love business owners. I'm here for entrepreneurs. I want to be a part of their conversation and help them walk through this path. And through a lot of prayer and conversation, ultimately, I just thought, I want a seat on the bus because what they're doing is really special. And, just like everything, the Lord had his hand on it from the very beginning. It's been such a blessing to step into the investment and generosity space with just a clean slate and an open mind of what this should look like and what it can look like and what it could be. So that was 2 years ago.
Wow.
So here we are.
Wow. And then your husband launched his agency. It sounds like a few months, and then COVID happened.
Yes. Yeah. It's the perfect time for a marketing and advertising agency. But actually the business thrived during COVID. It really did, because we had some clients who had to react to that. We had some large healthcare accounts. So we really thrived during what could have been a really, really hard time. It was actually the after effects, I think, of COVID that made the business
it harder,
a little bit more challenging. Yeah.
Well, at least you had your feet under you at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's super helpful from your personal journey. But as you were talking about the group that you were in, I think it'd be good right now for you to explain that to the listener, because I love that you offer these free groups that people can join, like you said, sometimes in person, often online, and explain what that looks like for an individual, how they sign up, what they will encounter, and what they'll learn about if they joined an online group that you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're called our foundation groups, and they're a 6-week journey. Most of them are online right now. Sometimes you'll see them in person, and we're certainly not opposed to in-person groups. We love that. But the beauty of online is you're connecting with people all across the world too, and so you're getting a global perspective oftentimes, which I think is just so incredible. I mean, it's encountering brothers and sisters in Christ you wouldn't normally otherwise. But the point of that, it's very similar to a Bible study or life group, right? You come together each week for an hour. We're going to watch a little bit of content, and then we're going to have a guided discussion and share about like what God is putting on our heart and what our takeaways are from that. And I mentioned earlier that this foundation piece is about the heart posture. It's about understanding like the why investing is like faith-driven investing and impact investing is important, why it's important to have a community around you, especially as wealth grows, how isolating it can be, so really starting that foundation of talking to others about how they're doing it or why they're doing it or what they've seen and what's worked well. And, have you had conversations with your kids about this or your spouse? And just being able to do that for 6 weeks, it's, it doesn't solve everything and you don't land all the planes, but it gets the conversation going and you start to hear that heart change. And so many people that I talk to afterwards are like, and that's why we have these solving the world's greatest problems weekends now, is because people were coming out of it and saying, this is amazing. You totally, like, I caught the vision and I get it. How do I do it? What do I do now?
What's my next step?
Yes.
Okay. So where do they go to sign up?
So faithdriveninvestor.org, if you go to our website and you click on community, there will be a button that says join a group. Okay. And and you can, it's that easy. It's that easy.
And what would you say to the listener who is super intimidated, doesn't know anything about even these terms you're talking about, faith-driven, impact investing?
Mhm.
What would you say to her about joining?
Yeah. So, I say that this is probably one of the safest spaces to do that. And we do have some female only groups. We try to have some of those each cohort
Nice.
for women only, because we know that this can be incredibly intimidating.
Mhm.
And it's a conversation that sadly a lot of us haven't been a part of up until now. And
Right.
it's so important. And so having a group online of 12 people where it's a completely safe place to ask all the questions. And then you get connected to me or my team, and it's one more resource,
Mhm.
where you can have a one-on-one person where you're emailing or calling or setting up, just a Zoom coffee to ask more of those questions, and us to be able to share resources to make women feel very comfortable in this space because they have a seat at the table. They need to take it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love the role that you all play in this generosity ecosystem. And so I really want to encourage every listener, if you have the time in your schedule, sign up today. And if not, maybe you can carve out the time this fall, but it will definitely be worth your time. And you're going to, not only are you going to learn new terms and figures and facts, but you're going to make new relationships, like Samantha said, all around the world, which you never know what that's going to do in your life and how that might change, your trajectory. So I would encourage women who are listening to go ahead and sign up for a group. I've been through a group myself and just really, really enjoyed it. So we talked last time on the episode about the great wealth transfer and how 80 trillion plus dollars is going to women. And this is part of the reason for this podcast is we have NCF as a generous sponsor, and NCF also partners with FGI, who Samantha works with, because there's a lot of synergy between the two organizations as two partners within this larger generosity ecosystem. So I'm just high leveling like who you are, who I'm with, so the listener
Yeah.
can just understand where everything fits.
Mhm.
So with the National Christian Foundation, you can simply open a giving fund, and you can think of that as your charitable checking account, and you can do all your charitable giving from that. And then you can work with Samantha's group, and you can learn more about, your calling, your shape, your career, and how does that tie to your money and your investing, and how am I investing my funds for am I using a donor advised fund, and then what about my own investments in my mutual funds? Who are those with? What do they represent? Lots of questions. And all of this is like kind of like a lifelong journey for each of us as we have more and more time to unpack things and figure out why we're doing what we're doing, what God's calling us to steward. And so this whole four-part series of the impact investing with the different guests is so that the listener you can each hear kind of the different facets of this diamond, and then you can figure out where you're at in your own life and what's my next step that I should take. And then the other group that is closely associated with this conversation as well is Impact Foundation. And the difference with that compared to the National Christian Foundation is you're putting your money into a donor advised fund. Sometimes it's moving over from the National Christian Foundation to Impact Foundation, but then you're able to use that charitable capital and invest in for-profit opportunities like making a loan or equity in the company, versus the National Christian Foundation, you're granting it out and you're not seeing that money again. You're giving it away to your church or to a nonprofit. Whereas this investing side is allowing you to take your 25,000 and invest it in a Christian film or a company overseas. And then maybe in 7 years, it's going to come back with interest. And then you can do that all over again. So lots of ways for us to steward and manage our capital that God has given us. And I think we're all just so blessed and privileged to be here in this country in America and ask God, what is it that you put us here for a reason, and how can we maximize the gifts that you've given us? So, okay, anything else you'd like to say? What about more from your personal journey of a blended family? How old are your kids now? in terms of life stage, balancing your career?
So it is crazy. So we're a blended family, and I have three adult stepchildren. My oldest is 31, and then my stepson will be 28 at the end of the summer, and then my youngest stepdaughter just graduated from college.
Oh, congrats!
Thank you. University of Richmond, go Spiders! But that's where she graduated, and she just turned 22. And then Brooks is, he's our caboose, and he just turned 7. So quite a gap between them, but it is amazing. And so actually every Thursday, all of the kids come over. So they were all at the house last night. And, we grill out and hang out, and they love their little brother so much.
It's so cute.
Yeah. I mean, he's so spoiled because
Right.
the age gap is so great. They're always wanting to do things with them. And it's really, really beautiful. Yeah.
And that helps you as the mom for sure.
Yes.
3 other parents helping
Yes.
you out. Oh,
yes. Absolutely.
Well, you touched it in our conversation before. We always talk about like overcoming adversity. And I know there's another side to your story there. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing, because I think it's helpful when our listeners hear that individuals are thriving now, but there've always been challenging times, and just how God used that adversity in your life to shape you into a believer and who you are today is an incredible story. So whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So I got married younger. So this is my husband now. This is my second marriage, and it was a very physically abusive, emotionally and verbally abusive marriage, which I can say that now with a smile on my face because God is so good. And I have, I made the conscious decision to start sharing that more openly about 2 years ago, because I think I'm kind of proof that this can happen to anybody. And you never, and people were blown away when I would share it. And I thought, gosh, I guess maybe more women need to hear this, and so getting out of that, I started going back to the church that I'd grown up in, and I knew I was seeking something, and it just, I was leaving every week and not really feeling like what I thought I would feel by going back to church. And God so graciously put my husband right in front of me, my now husband. And he's a believer, very strong believer. But more importantly, my oldest stepdaughter was a very strong believer, and she was 17 at the time. And she just had this amazing, I was very broken. I didn't know how to communicate well or effectively, or how to show love. I didn't understand this man who spoke to me with so much respect and love and patience. It was just like, I pushed every boundary and he just kept loving me so well. And it was my stepdaughter who, got me into the front door of their church. And because I grew up Catholic, and then they were a, non-denominational Christian. It was very, very different for me. You grab your coffee when you come in, and the music was, really fun and upbeat. And, it was just very different than how I grew up. And I was like, okay. But each week it was, she just kept loving me and pouring into me. And that started in February. And by October of 2011, I made the decision to be baptized. And, I just think it's really special that this 17-year-old girl was the one, just shows that God can do anything through anyone at any time.
Yes.
And just really redeemed my story and my life. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. So yeah, that just has given me, I don't know, a different kind of strength and determination, I think, to get to where I am now.
Well, thank you for sharing. And it just makes me see the parallels that God has put in your life of the redemption on the personal side. And yet at FDI, so much of that is redemptive enterprise that you're working in. So that is really wonderful how he dovetailed that all together for you in your job.
Yeah.
Oh, well, wonderful. Okay. So what else would you like to share with the guests regarding just this whole field that FDI is involved with, or any other thoughts with the female side that you want to encourage women?
Yes, absolutely want to encourage them. And I do want, the foundation groups are so important to be a part of. And, if you make it to the website, or and you can't find it, please email me. I want to be a resource even if it's just to have a Zoom coffee and a chat about, to talk about this a little bit more deeply. But I really want to encourage stepping into the Solving the World's Greatest Problems weekends as well. We're really coming around families to do that. So, husband and wife, or if you're not married, we've got lots of singles in there too. But we also have people who are bringing their adult children
Nice.
to these weekends and having those conversations, as a family unit. And we come together for a weekend, but we also meet monthly for 5 months after that. It's, we kind of tee it up in that launch weekend and then walk through, some foundational principles for 5 months afterwards. But coming out of our very first weekend, we just did this for the first time in Chapel Hill in January. And there were so many couples who said, this is the first time we've ever had this conversation. There were some wives who were like, he's been in finance for 25 years and we've never even talked about this, and there were a lot of women who, whose children, since they were grown, were kind of like wrestling with who even am I now that my children are grown, if I've been working, maybe I'm approaching, thinking about retirement, or if I stayed home and now like the kids are launched, what do I do now? Who am I? And so really just being able to connect with other women in that same space in a weekend, in a beautiful setting. We're going to be in the Bay Area in September. We're going to Hayes Mansion. I've never been there, but it looks absolutely beautiful.
Looks amazing.
So we try to make it, a destination wherever we're going in these cities. And just to be able to have that time in person to talk about it is so important. To be able to set time with your spouse where it's a guided conversation. You're not just relying on one another to sit down at the end of a long day to have that conversation, but just to make it intentional and understanding and owning, your responsibility in this, and that you deserve to be there and you deserve to have those conversations. God, He's not here to make us comfortable, but He is here to make us new. And this is just one more facet of that. So I just want to, be such an encouragement, whether it's this, or I know you talk about women doing well, or there's so many different tools.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to choose one over the other. It can be a journey, and from point A to B to C to D and whatever that looks like, but it's just going to continue to sharpen you as a female in this space.
That's a great call out with Women Doing Well, because with Women Doing Well, we're helping a woman figure out her 2-word purpose statement, which is hard-coded in her DNA, always been a part of her, whether it's inspiring hope, cultivating growth, liberating greatness, and then the passions, which might be anti-trafficking now, but might have been homelessness in college. Those can change based on where God has you at the season. And then the third component is your plan for generosity. And then you're putting all 3 of those things together to figure out, what does God want me to do today with my time, talents, treasures? And then what you're talking about, solving the world's greatest problems, is more of, if you are married, please bring your spouse and be at this event together. And when you're gathering at an event as couples or singles, and you're with people who really care about, there are amazing things in this world, but there's a lot of darkness and a lot of things that are broken. And I want to be a small part of making a really big impact. You're gathered like-minded people in that kind of an event, a beautiful space, beautiful place. And those are transformative weekends. And I know my husband and I, with the various events we've attended over our marriage, we look back and it really, one couple we sat next to helped us to really think, wow, they're doing this. Okay, I think that sounds like what we want to do. So it's the programming and it's the place, but it's also that you're with like-minded believers, which is hard to find sometimes, that all have that same similar heart for the cause that you're all gathered together for. So I think you also have one in Austin, right? If someone's listening in Austin.
We do, yes, and Dallas. So we've got, in the fall, we'll be in San Jose and Dallas and Austin. And then we already have some planned for 2026. We'll be in Houston and Jacksonville and likely Chicago.
Okay, wonderful.
So we'll those too,
And share your email in case they want to reach out.
Yes, it's Samantha at faithdriveninvestor.org.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I just love having you on the show, and I feel like it's a perfect advertisement for FDI, but also just the perfect spotlight on you as a mom, a wife, a career woman, and how you're balancing it all. And I'm sure sometimes it looks amazing, other times it's really messy.
Really.
And you also balance you getting in your healthy food and your workouts in there too,
Right.
which is also great. But I think you're just a real inspiration. So I'm so glad you've been on the show. And I want to make sure that we have time for you to share current book that you're reading, favorite Bible verse, and then a recent bargain.
Yes. Okay. So I brought my book. So my stepdaughter gave me this for Christmas. It's The Year in the Bible. It's by Alabaster. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they make
I haven't.
really, really beautiful individual books of the Bible.
Okay.
But I have struggled with Bible in a Year projects so much because if I'm going to be completely transparent, the Old Testament can get really, really difficult for me.
All the
And
names.
what I love about this plan is they bounce back and forth. Each week has a theme. So this week, the overarching theme is the beauty of serving others. And I've been in Mark, I've been in Corinthians, I've been in Exodus, Samuel, Psalms, Job, Jeremiah. So you're bouncing back and forth between old and new and relating it all back to what this common theme is for the week. And then you continue to move through it. So it's been the best experience and the one I've been able to stick to.
I love it.
So far. So that's been really, really great. And then just for fun, I love Catherine Center as an author. I think her books are really fun. She just had a new one come out. I think it's called The Love Haters. It's nothing cerebral, but it is a great book to read.
Great.
Which is always a good time too. We need those two.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then let's see, favorite Bible verse is going to be Romans 12:2. So do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but transformed by the renewing of your mind. I think that transformation piece has just been such a common theme throughout my life, and one that I've really clung to. So that's what I go back to time and time again. And then what was the last? Oh, bargain.
Your bargain.
Yes, bargain. I told you earlier, I don't spend, I think this is probably common for moms. I don't spend a lot of money on myself. But ironically, just a couple of weeks ago, I really love Adidas. I love the brand Adidas. I love Adidas shoes. I think they're so much fun. And, but they're like $100. And I'm always like, I do not need that. Well, I got served an ad. So Facebook must have known that, I would never buy this for myself, but they were this really cute pair that was green and lavender for $30. They're normally $100. So that felt like a bargain. Yeah. But also going back to that fitness and wellness piece, we belong to a subscription service called Thrive Market. And so it feels like an ongoing bargain because it's a subscription, but you can get whole foods, clean snacks for your family, produce, even frozen items at a pretty competitive price. So we've really, really enjoyed that too. That feels like a good.
That's perfect. That's so great. That's so great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Samantha, for being here, for your generosity. I think it's clear we focused on faith, family, finance as our pillars for today. And I know everyone listening has their own family, their own situation, their own finances, and just want to encourage each of you to just ask God, what does he have for you? And to believe really big dreams of, I'm sure Samantha couldn't imagine 10 years ago you'd be getting to do what you're doing today, but you've just continued to say yes. And that's the same for everyone listening. Like God has a path that he wants you to just say yes to and keep taking that step. And again, whether it's joining one of these FDI groups, whether it's attending this Solving the World's Greatest Problems in San Jose in September, I just want to encourage the woman listening that you're important, you matter, and God has a big story and a big plan for you to live. And I'm just excited to get to, we've had this conversation. We'll move into our third of the 4-part series in our next episode. But how about if you just close us out, Samantha, and pray for each listener?
Absolutely. I would love to. And something you just said resonated with my quiet time with the Lord today and the prompting in the devotional that I had. The man said, Lord, the answer is always yes. Now let me know what the question is. And I thought,
Ooh,
oh man,
good.
talk about being faithful. And
That
so
is really good.
that's a new posture for me.
I love that. Yes.
To reflect through,
Yeah.
just that trust in the Lord. So yeah, let me
That's
pray
good.
for us.
Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Father God, I'm so grateful for Kim and this platform to be able to share, and the women who are tuning in and listening. Lord, I just would ask that you would wrap your arms around them. And affirm them in their significance and their seat at the table and their place in this world, and help them to fix their eyes on you, Lord, and that they would just be willing to listen and obey to whatever your will may be for them. And that Faith Driven and Impact Foundation and NCF, Kim, myself, all of us, that we can just be a resource to come around these women, empower them, love them, and help them just be, a stop along the way in the journey of obedience to you, Lord. We love you. We're grateful for you. Thank you. It's in all these things that I pray in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you again, and God bless.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.